Baker Show. Seeking answers to age-old questions, deciphering the world painted around you by the mainstream media. This is the Kev Baker Show. And now, here is your host, Kev Baker.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone out there. Welcome back to the maddest and fastest hour in the whole of alternative radio. I hope you've all had a lovely weekend. I'm your host tonight, Kev Baker. This is the Kev Baker Show, and we are live this 21st of December, going into holiday week now, folks. So, Kev here, I'm in the holiday mood. Holiday mode is on. Johnny whistles, he must be in the holiday mode as well. I think the big man is taking a much-deserved rest tonight, but I have got a brilliant guest to join me for tonight's show. However, before we get there, stay tuned right after this show. My good friend Joe Joseph will be coming up with Gwen Caldwell, and they're going to be getting into things like geoengineering, Fukushima cover-up, and, wait for this, the basics of a staged bio-terror event. Joe Joseph and Gwen are going to be staging a terror event. How can we possibly afford to miss that? Could be the last thing we ever hear from Joe. And I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in tonight. I'm going to head over to the chat room, give you all a quick shout out before we get to tonight's guest, the one and only aforementioned Joe Joseph in the chat room. We've got Lucky, Penelope, Adam, Bill, Brendan, Charlie, Chris, Connor, David, Devlin, do you want to know? Frederico, Gail, John. Big shout out to John. Great work always on the Facebook. We've got John Teeter was here. Kenny, myself, Lichty, Mark, Matthew, Nancy. We've got two Op Free Worlds in there tonight, and I'm so sorry I haven't been able to hook up with you yet, brother. I've added you on Skype, and we will talk very, very soon. We've got Peter Small. We've got Papa, the real Joe Wood. You can find her over at Twitter. We've got Reese, Risey, and we have got Sam, Scottish John, Shane, TFR Wookie, Tim Osman, Time Lord Tracy, Transpersonal, 40 people in there. Thank you all so much. It's been a big year for the Kev Baker Show and a big year for TFR, and that's thanks to all of you great people out there. And remember, if you want to support the network and keep us 100% listener free, head over to the archive page for your favourite show, sign up there, and you will help to keep us 100% ad-free, and you will also be supporting the network and the hosts. So, without any further ado, can't wait to welcome this guest back on tonight. We've got Ben Emlyn Jones. Now, Ben's the guy behind something called Hypanwo TV, or Hypanwo over at Blogspot, and that's HPANWO, Hospital Porters Against the New World Order. Now, if you haven't heard Ben before, he's the man behind the website dedicated to the latest news, views, and reviews from the world of government cover-ups, ghosts, UFOs, hospital porters, paranormal investigation, hidden knowledge, forbidden history, archaeologies, chemtrails, and so much more. And that's why it makes him such a perfect fit for the Kev Baker Show. So, on this Christmas cracking week, for our Christmas X-Files special, welcome back, Ben.
Hello, Kev.
How are you doing, man? I need a drink of coffee after all that. I don't know about you.
You got through all that in one breath.
I tried to, but how are you doing, Ben, before we get into this tonight? Because I know you work almost as tirelessly as me. Busy time of year. Are you good, man?
I am fine, thanks, mate. I'm fine. I've had a busy day today. Done an awful lot, but it's all worth it, I think.
Oh, definitely. And today I was watching one of your latest videos, and it was your Christmas special. Now, you were taking a lovely stroll in the park, and this is so apt for where we're going to start tonight.
Yeah.
Because there's something unseasonably weird going on in the UK right now. And we'd like to speak about the weather in the UK, and that's what we're going to be talking about, Ben. What is going on?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm sure I'm not the only one asking some serious questions about why the weather is so strange at the moment. It's just the problem is, will people come to the correct answers? That's the issue. But there's no doubt about it. The weather is something I've been watching. I actually wrote about this first in November on the Hapanwo voice blog, and I've made several videos about this. And what's basically happened is the weather, when winter arrives in southern Britain, normally it starts getting colder in November time. It didn't. The sort of September, October weather maintained. It kept going, and I thought, this is odd. I mean, sometimes this happens, but it's very rare. And then the thing about it is it carried on into December when it's supposed to be winter. But normally, it's for people who don't live in this part of the world. Normally, you'd be getting cold. We'd be getting some ice. We'd be getting a little bit of snow, probably. Not a hell of a lot, just the odd day here and there. And we'd have frost and we'd have ponds frozen over. That hasn't happened. And believe it or not, we've had it was 17 degrees centigrade in some parts of southern Britain the other day. It's sort of gone a bit back to normal. Well, not back to normal, but it's gone back to where it was before now. And I'm wondering what's going on. I mean, I'm a gardener, you see, by trade. When I'm not making videos and doing radio shows and things, I am actually a gardener. And it's weird because I've been seeing flowers out when they really shouldn't be. I mean, snowdrops, for example. I managed to see a patch of snowdrops, and I filmed them. They're in the video. And I don't normally see them till at least February, and they're out now. And there's daffodils in London. I mean, people have been putting photos up of daffodils in London. It's and the poor things, they think it's spring. And of course, if we get a frost now, they're all going to die. But are we going to get one? That's the question. Now, when this happens, I mean, I think to myself, what the hell's going on? And probably everyone's thinking that. And a lot of people are going to blame it on climate change. They're going to say, well, this is climate change caused by us, basically, by our industrial society, putting carbon dioxide emissions up into the atmosphere. I personally wonder if there might be another cause for all this, and that is geoengineering. That is the deliberate, industrialized manipulation of the world's weather. And the technology for that does exist. I mean, this is not a conspiracy theory. The weather modification technology has been going along for a long time. It's been around for a long time. The first experiments were actually done in the 19th century on the island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic Ocean, which is known for its changeable weather inland. It's a small island, but inland it tends to have different weather. And what happened was people would light fires and send clouds of smoke up into the atmosphere, and to see if this would have any effect on the clouds. And it turns out it did. And this experimentation went on. Now, there's actually a video. It's on YouTube. It's actually a film made in 1950 by Walt Disney, and it's narrated by Walt Disney himself. And it's a part filmed, part animation science fiction documentary about a future world in which weather would be engineered, and it's well worth seeing. It's called Eyes in the Skies or Eyes in Space, or so, because it also talks about satellites and about how satellites can be used as well for weather forecasting. But it has a scenario where geoengineering could be used, for instance, to protect the United States eastern seaboard from hurricanes, which have caused so much trouble in that part of the world. And now in the Vietnam War, some of this was put into practice. Cloud seeding was used, in which several chemicals were sprayed into the sky, which caused clouds to form. Because at the time in the Vietnam War, the Viet Cong, this was the guerrilla force in the country, was being supplied from the communist North Vietnam out by what's called the Ho Chi Minh Trail. This was just basically small tracks through the woods where people would just, with bikes and on foot, they would just carry supplies. And this was very, very successful. And it was very, very difficult to stop, because it's not like these are big roads you can bomb. These are like tiny little tracks. And so what the Americans did was they cloud seeded during the monsoon when it gets really, really wet. So it made the monsoon even wetter. And these tracks were washed away. Bridges were destroyed when rivers overflowed. There was landslides and things which blocked the way. And the Ho Chi Minh Trail was blocked. And there was also another incident which I think we should know about. This is officially secret, but some of you might be familiar with the Lynmouth disaster. This was a terrible incident that happened in 1952. Lynmouth is this lovely little town in the North Devon coast, and it's a beautiful place, and they've rebuilt it quite well. But in 1952, it was almost destroyed. About half the village was wiped out by a flash flood. 35 people were killed, 100 buildings were destroyed, hundreds were made homeless. And there was some kind of operation going on Exmoor, which is where the rivers come from, and in which the RAF were experimenting with some kind of weather modification technique. And the government had been trying to keep it quiet. But it's possible the Lynmouth disaster was actually a live test of this geoengineering equipment. I mean, whether they intended to kill all those people or not,
and
I don't know.
Ben, experiments like that one and others probably led to the UN Weather Weapons Treaty being formulated in the 70s. I mean, how people still don't accept the fact that this is very, very real is beyond me.
And when I was a little kid, Kev, right? I was a little kid. And I remember watching Tomorrow's World. That was quite a good program. This would have been 1980 something. And I remember watching about how they were worried about global warming. And they said because at the time there had been global warming because it was getting colder from about 1940 onwards. It had been getting colder. Then in the 70s, it started getting warmer again. And it's been getting warmer ever since. So it's sort of slowed down a bit now. It's been getting warmer certainly since the 70s. And this is when the carbon emission global warming thing started appearing in the media. And they said that there was a way of stopping climate change or slowing it down. And the way they would do it is to create a layer of aerosol chemicals in the atmosphere, which would reflect the sunlight back out into space, which would actually cool the planet down. And this would have several effects. I mean, it would increase acid rain. That would be a side effect. It also said that it would make the sky turn white instead of blue. And what's more, they said that the best way of actually distributing this layer of chemical in the atmosphere was to have it deposited by high-flying aircraft. Now, what we see now is when we look up at aircraft, is it looks like they are depositing high-flying aircraft. You see them going over all the time. Airliners. There's a lot of air traffic. Air traffic is so common now but you see a lot of these aircraft actually laying these what are known as chemtrails. I'm sure most listeners have heard that word before. And these are not just normal contrails. And we had a guy on Ian R. Crane's Humanity versus Insanity program the other day. A Dutch airline pilot was actually saying, this is not natural. And he's the guy who flies for KLM. And the effect this is having is making the sky turn white. I mean, if you look after a big chemtrail attack, the sky doesn't look its natural blue, it looks white. And, I mean, Ben, it's not even just us in the alternative saying this anymore. We've got the Smithsonian a few days ago coming out and saying, if you go outside on a clear day and look up towards the sun, be careful to block out the bright disk with your thumb. You might see a hazy white region around our star. And this haze is caused by airplanes. And they're starting to talk about this now in the mainstream. But the thing is, Ben, they're trying to say it was an unintended kind of side effect of these contrails. They're saying they're saying basically this is just water vapor mixed with a bit of soot from the fuel in the aircraft. What happens is the aircraft runs off. It has a fuel. It has a fossil fuel. It runs off. This is then comes the jet engine burns it, so it's hot. It comes out hot, and like your own breath does on a cold day. It hasn't happened yet this winter, but the water it'll actually condense. And so you get like a cloud of steam coming out of your mouth. The difference is the cloud of steam that comes out of your mouth doesn't linger for hours and doesn't spread out to be a dozen miles across and be so thick. Even a single one can actually reduce sunlight considerably. That's not just water vapor and soot. That is some kind of chemical which is reacting with the air to create some kind of vapor. And I don't know what it is. I don't know what. I mean, whatever it's for, it's bad news for us. Some people say it's connected to Morgellons disease and putting artificial life forms into the Earth's biosphere. Other people say it is solar radiation management, a secret operation of solar radiation management.
Well, Ben, I say all of the above plus X, Y, and Z because basically they use these operations and they're so multifaceted. Now, I grew up in the Highlands, and for anyone who watches Game of Thrones out there, I grew up basically north of the Wall. This place was wild in winter, knee-high and deep. Then as I grew into my teenage years, started to get a little bit milder, moved away, went to the army, came back. And now, Ben, things have definitely changed. And something else that's changed this year. This year's been really key. We started to name storms in the UK. What the hell is that all about?
I know we've had Abigail, we've had Desmond, and now what's the next one? Eva?
Eva. And I'm wondering, I'm going to put this to you, because I'm one of these tinfoil hat wearers, right? These conspiracy theorists that think because there was a massive climate conference on in Paris just recently, could it all be tied together? Could they be hyping the fear, giving us a false perception that ooga booga, Al Gore and global warming's going to get us?
I'm sure it's just coincidence, Kev.
Of course it is, yes.
And the problem is you can't, that's the problem. The moment someone says that, it's an unfalsifiable premise, as I think we talked about on a previous program. But the fact of the matter is weather does sometimes occasionally do this sort of thing naturally, and you can't avoid it. I mean, the Earth has been warming up. At least I think it was warming up till about 2000. Now sort of leveled off.
And they're clever, Ben, because they occult that natural change, which obviously occurs. Cycles are everywhere in nature, and climate is the same. Because if they can hide that fact, well, they can make a buck off it. And that is what this is all about.
Well, it is partly, I mean, of course, because we have carbon tax now, and there's the IPCC. I mean, climate change is a big industry. If you're a scientist in the scientific world, it has now become so accepted that if you deny it, if you say, even if you do it according to proper scientific methods, like people like Johnny Ball, the TV presenter, and David Bellamy, you'll be just kicked. You will lose everything, and you've got to ask yourself, in that kind of intellectual environment, can real science be done? And I would say no. What I suspect is happening is that this whole idea about carbon emissions goes back to the Club of Rome and several books such as the Report from Iron Mountain and several other books that were published by think tanks, which said that world government and complete control could be achieved if instead of an enemy power, we have something else. And damage to the environment caused by human activity could be one of those things, could be one of the things they propose to justify global authoritarian government.
And we've had the Pope coming out. He's been urging us all to roll up for this. I totally get that. It's like an outside alien threat, Ben, something they can scare us with, to unite us with. So we all cry out for their help because they've got us that dumbed down and dependent now. The natural reaction for people, unfortunately, is to look to government.
I know. I mean, the one guy's really interesting. A guy I've met a couple of times, and I went to see one of his lectures. Is Piers Corbyn. Now he's got in the media now when he never did before. The reason is he's the brother of Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the opposition.
Well, a bit of a synchronicity. I actually featured him in my little video I done before the show, and I was mentioning how he really has been bang on, long term and short term, and he's been warning of a mini ice age.
But he is what he said is that it's very interesting because he said that the actual cause of climate is it's nothing to do with carbon levels in the atmosphere. Carbon. I'm using their language now. It's carbon dioxide. Carbon is this black stuff you get when you burn things, or you get burnt toast.
It's that pesky stuff that we exhale.
Solid,
the stuff that the trees inhale. You know, that stuff we need.
It's natural. It's plant food. It's a natural part of the Earth's atmosphere. But anyway, Piers Corbyn says that it's to do with solar cycles. Sun actually is the guide of climate, and he's made some predictions that have been far more accurate than those coming out of the IPCC. I mean, I remember watching. What you said about things getting warmer in Scotland was true. There's no doubt about it. But I remember watching programs about climate change in the sort of early 90s that said by 2015 it'll be like. Southern Scotland will have the same climate as northern France, which of course is not true.
And being in Glasgow on the west coast of Scotland, I should really by rights be in a canoe by now. London should be underwater. I remember the maps when I was leaving school. None of that came to fruition.
Well, presumably if Scotland had the temperature of northern France and southern England should have the temperature of Mediterranean France, so we should be on the Riviera down here.
I'd be moving down, man. I'd be moving there.
Yeah, well, that's right, man. Get down the beach. No, I'll tell you. But Piers Corbyn has been much more accurate. Piers Corbyn is actually predicting that the levelling off of the climate warming that we're experiencing now is coming to an end. But it's not going to go up. It's going to go down. He is indeed predicting. I don't know if he's predicting a full ice age. I hope not, because that would be a disaster. But
it's just a mini ice age, and the thing is, it doesn't actually need to get all that much colder. I mean, I've always envisaged this kind of cold snap, like the day after tomorrow. But if you actually listen to the scientists, they explain it just needs the actual precipitation to go up. Because then as everything soaks in and becomes moist, all you need then, Ben, is a good hard frost to come along, a couple of temperatures lower than normal, a couple of degrees, and voila, there you have it.
Well, I'm not scared, Kevin. I'll tell you why. Because climate is constantly in flux, and we know that, and humans have survived.
And we're northerners. We're used to this.
Well, you're a jock. I mean, you know, nothing would scare you. You could put you in the North Pole, you'd be fine.
That's why I've got to laugh when I see them naming storms. I mean, this just used to be a walk to school when I was growing up. A bit of a wind, yes, but compare it to some areas in the world, Ben. It's hardly anything.
I know, and of course we have this conference is really what's screwing everything up. The COP21 conference, as I explained in the video I made about it, is a enormously politically charged event, and this is why they're naming storms, and this is why I think they've geoengineered the weather for the last couple of months, and I can't prove it, but I suspect it. And what's more, what annoys me is when these people at the climate change conference, they kept using the terms pre-industrial levels. And this is a very scary thing. Well, first of all, the first point I'd like to make is, when you mean pre-industrial levels, what do they mean? Do they mean the medieval warm period, maybe the 10th century when the global temperature was 3 degrees higher and people were so well off they could build cathedrals? Or do they mean maybe 2,000 years ago when the temperature was also high and the Romans had vineyards right up to Hadrian's Wall? So we're talking
listen
about
here,
Cumbria,
you dangerous conspiracy theorists. You have to stick to the hockey graph, Matt.
They got rid of the hockey stick, didn't they, in the climate gate? Remember?
And they got rid of global warming for climate change.
Oh, they rebranded it.
How can anyone argue with climate change? Because we have winter followed by spring. The climate's always changing.
And I'll tell you what, I've got a challenge. Just go up to Cumbria or Northumbria, where Hadrian's Wall still is, as you can still see it. Try setting up a vineyard there and see what kind of wine you produce. We are cooler now than we were 2,000 years ago. In fact, we're cooler than we were 1,000 years ago. We had the mini ice age between the 16th and 18th century, where the Thames used to freeze over.
I was just going to say that. There was people skating on the Thames.
Yeah. But you know what, Bob? The real danger of this COP, you think the COP21, Kev, this is different than the previous climate conferences, such as the Kyoto Protocol and the Earth Summit in Brazil, because those managed to do deals where certain countries would agree to reduce their carbon emissions by a certain level. They would say, well, reduce it by 20% by 2020, things like that. And they say, okay, they've signed up to that, and so they went and did it. Well, first of all, the problem is it's not that simple, because these deals were then turned into bonds, which became a kind of currency. The carbon credits, they were floated on the stock market. They could be bought, sold, and bartered. So they became, some people suggested that could be the world currency. The second problem is that in this new one, this new latest, they've not mentioned carbon emission reduction targets. What they have mentioned instead is temperature rise. They have said that the goal is not for certain countries to reduce carbon dioxide emissions, but for all of us to get together to prevent the climate rising more than 1 degree more than what it is today.
And here's the thing, Ben, and this is why it worries me, because with something like global dimming and, dare I say it, the poor consequence or that unfortunate consequence of geoengineering via the contrails, you can see certain countries heating up over that limit and being made to pay heinous fines.
And not only that, what they could do is if the variable is temperature only, then everything else has to fit around that variable, which means, so for example, if the IPCC decides, or whoever's managing this protocol decides to, in order to prevent the Earth's temperature going up to above 2 degrees, we need to reduce, say, the most industrialized nation on Earth, which is China. We need to reduce China's carbon emissions by 90% or 95%. That effectively means deindustrializing China. If you deindustrialize China, you not only cut the entire world's industry by about 50 to 60%, but you also you send the Chinese people back to the fields.
We all need our iPhones, Ben.
Yeah, well, the Chinese at the moment now live in nice apartments and they have computers and cars and things. You send them back to the damn fields, where they were 100 years ago. So this is essentially a mandate for global deindustrialization. And that would inevitably lead to enormous poverty, enormous suffering, and population reduction. And I think this is what they're looking to do. They're looking to reduce the population, and people at the moment won't stand for it. They won't stand to being forcibly sterilized. They won't stand to having forced abortions. They won't stand to having limits on families. But if it's necessary to save the planet, and the government can make us believe that it has to be done, or else people will accept it.
And we always talk about weaponized food. Now we're talking about weaponized weather, folks. Check out things like HARP, geoengineering, and check out Chemtrails over on Twitter. We have to keep on top of this. It's a really effective way of waking people up.
Yeah.
Right now in December, with it being so unseasonably warm, people are actually naturally asking questions. It's up to us to bombard them with the truth. Now, Ben, where can people find your work quickly before we go to break?
Hospital Porters Against the New World Order, hpanwo.blogspot.com. That's the main site and also a portal to all my other websites.
And remember, folks, Joe Joseph, Gwen Caldwell and Johnny King will be coming up right after the Kev Baker Show, and they'll be carrying this conversation on because I can tell you it's unseasonably hot in the States as well. Stay tuned. We're going in the search of UFOs, and wait for it, even Santa. Join us.
This is the Kev Baker Show.
Welcome back, everyone, to this live edition of the Kev Baker Show right here on your number one network, truthfrequencyradio.com. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. And tonight's special guest is Mr. Ben Emlyn Jones. Now, you can find his work over at hpanwo-voice.blogspot.co.uk, and I'll have all of his links in the show notes. And Ben does a heck of an amount of work, and I urge you all to check him out. Just such a nice guy, really informative. And as we're going to get into as the show progresses, you will see why he is one of the perfect guests for the Kev Baker Show. Now, before the break, I was hinting we were going on the search for Santa, and he must be one person who's pretty worried right now, Ben, considering that the North Pole and the ice caps are all melting away, right?
Yeah, I mean, I hope he can deliver my presents. I want that Starbird. I really do.
Tell me about it. I want my hoverboard. One that doesn't blow up, preferably.
Well, according to Back to the Future, we're supposed to have one by now, aren't we?
I was telling some of the guys over in the States that we've got this new craze, the hoverboard over here, and they were amazed. They were like, wow. And then I explained to them that this hoverboard sits on two wheels which are firmly on the ground, kind of defeating the whole hovering purpose.
Oh, yeah, till they declassify the anti-gravity, yeah, the Tesla technology.
So what's happening at the ice caps, Ben? You were talking to me during the break, and this is really interesting.
Well, I think we covered so much before. I mean, I think hopefully we've given enough people enough information, but there's also historical records I should have added about climate change and about the medieval warm period. And now we mentioned ClimateGate before, where the scientists are currently they're trying to brush it over. The government are trying to brush it under the table.
So many people forget like that. So many forget about ClimateGate, Ben. Yeah. It really annoys me.
Well, it was really amazing because the University of East Anglia, there were some emails that were leaked. Someone hacked into their accounts, which I wouldn't normally recommend, but in this case, they did as a public service because the emails were these two scientists who were almost tacitly and subconsciously talking about the need to cover up information. And one of those is related to the hockey stick hoax. The hockey stick hoax is basically trying to pretend that the pre-industrial levels, that favourite catchphrase of the climate people, the carbonistas, is basically was the same for all right. You go into the past, it's been the same for thousands of years, and then suddenly in the 20th century it shoots up, but it doesn't, because there's a big bow. It's not like a hockey stick. It's more like ironically, it looks like the outline of Santa's sleigh. Because during the Middle Ages, there was what's called the medieval warm period, where for about 800 years, the temperature was about 3 degrees above what it is now. Now, it's not just the climate scientists who found this out. There's historical documents. Now, there's a guy called Admiral Zheng Hu. He's an explorer. He traveled the world, and he went to as many places as he could. And in the 9th century, Admiral Zheng Hu took his ship up the coast of the Western Pacific Ocean. He went from China, he went past Japan, and up into, if you get your atlases out, you can see he went up to the Bering Straits where Siberia and Alaska meet. He went through the Bering Straits and explored parts of the Arctic Ocean. And we know from his reports that on his journey, the ice was far thinner than it is now. And that's to be expected because the Earth's temperature was much higher than it is now. But the polar bears survived. They adapted. they got over it, and then when the temperature started dropping again, the ice became thicker. And that's how it goes. That's natural. Now, whether it was the turbocharged hand carts or whatever the people were using at the time, I think that's the explanation they're going to have to come out with. If they can explain that carbon dioxide emissions are a factor of climate change.
And it's laughable how they use this polar bear argument. If there was Arctic puppies, you can be sure they'd be using them or kittens to pull on the heartstrings of people.
That's what it's about. It's about trying to hit us in our emotions, so we lose control of our logic. And they do this all the time. They do this with 9/11 as well. They do this with a lot of things. You see a picture of a poor little polar bear standing on a lump of melting ice, and he's like going, "Oh, this cute little polar bear." Well, they're not that cute, actually. If you try to pat one, it'll bite your arm off. And
as opposed to the beach in Marbella where they usually hang out. Do you know what I mean?
But the thing about it is, what they don't mention is that polar bears are excellent swimmers. Polar bears can easily swim 100 miles. And
don't let the facts get in the way of a good lie. Come on, Ben.
You see these little kids going there, going, "Oh, the poor polar bear!" Oh. And it's like, I've actually I've got a friend of mine who ordered an Agenda 21 book for children, and I had a look through it, and I know that if I'd been a little kid reading that, it would have given me nightmares. It would have shocked me on an emotional level, and that's what they're doing. Have you ever seen No Pressure, Kevin?
I haven't seen that. No.
No Pressure is a short 2-minute film by Richard Curtis of Monty Python and Blackadder fame. It's a very high budget event. It has some famous actors in and actresses like Gillian Anderson of X-Files. It has the footballer David Ginola, and
you had me at Gillian Anderson, man.
Oh, she's from X-Files, yeah. But you know what? You won't believe now. I'm going to tell you something you will not believe. I wouldn't expect you to. Just Google No Pressure Richard Curtis and check it out for yourself. One of the scenes has a school teacher, and she blows up 2 of her children. She actually presses a button, and they blow up. It's true.
What?
I know I don't expect you to believe it, and I wouldn't have believed it if someone told me. Now, it's all to do with climate change. They say if you don't want to do anything about climate change, you deserve to die horribly. And that again, it's emotional terrorism, Kev. Emotional terrorism.
And this is what they use on us all the time. And something else that terrorizes young people, Ben, and this is where we can throw all the logic out the window now. We can get right into the X-Files. And that's when you find out that Santa Claus, dare I say it, how people think this, but there's this rumour going about that he might not be real, Ben. Well, that's another traumatizing event for children.
Surely not.
Exactly. I do not believe it. And, this was all inspired by your video today because you really made me think. We hear about religious people seeing religious icons coming to them. We hear about other people who may have experiences with one sort of alien or another, so on and so forth. Not very often, if ever, do we hear about anyone encountering Santa. And when you think about this, Ben, because it is so out there in the collective consciousness that it's quite beyond the realms of possibility, you would think, that nobody's come forward with that.
Well, this is what I would like to ask the skeptics who say these things. They say that paranormal encounters, UFOs, aliens, ghosts, all these sort of things, these are all products of our mind, and they're conditioned by our culture. For example, one skeptic, a guy called Robert Taylor, not far from where you live in Scotland, he was walking through the woods one day, and he came across a big spherical UFO, and this thing even ripped his trousers. It was really close to him. And some skeptic came forward and said, well, all Robert Taylor saw, he was just having some kind of delusion because he was watching Doctor Who the night before, and there was a machine on there that looked very similar. Now the thing about it is, I mean, of course, in that case, you've got to ask the question, if what we see outside in terms of paranormal phenomena are not objective, there's no objective to reality to them, they're all based on internal thoughts and from our culture, why does nobody see Santa Claus? Not even children report it. And, adults don't, not even children do. I mean, you don't get a single case. I've not heard of a single case of an old man walking his dog on Cannock Chase one winter's evening on Christmas Eve. He looks up in the sky, he sees a sleigh with reindeer flying over and big Santa waving, going ho, ho, ho.
And I've listened to shows on the likes of Coast to Coast where they talk about people seeing fairies. And I'm not belittling that in any way because it's part of the paranormal. But I'm just trying to add to the case that there's something else that, growing adults, you would think might balk at. But no.
Well, you see, this is the thing. If the thing is, if the skeptics are correct, and this folklore, this culture, these cultural forces, and these folklore memes are what causes us to have these experiences. But Santa Claus is such a big figure within our folklore. Santa Claus is, everyone's heard of him, everyone's seen him. He appears in shop windows. He dates back to many, many years. I mean, it started with Father Christmas in the Middle Ages. Then Coca-Cola got hold of it.
And then we've got Krampus over in Eastern Europe and Germany and things like that. It's quite a sinister kind of take on the Christmas tale.
I mean, I had a skeptic talking about near-death experiences the other day, and he was saying, "Oh, it's all made up. These kids." I was listening to a child who had a near-death experience, and he said he saw Marge Simpson. And so then I'd say, well, look, Marge Simpson, of course, is a folkloric figure, but then not as big as Santa Claus. Nobody sees Santa Claus, which means that could it be that the whole concept, the whole theory that what's in our brains, in our cultures, in our psyche, our mass media is what forms these experiences, these delusions. It can't be true. That theory cannot be true if Santa Claus is absent, I would say.
I just absolutely love this because there's no harm in tuning into our inner child. We all have it, and bit of fun, it goes a long way, especially some of the topics we cover. But we're talking Santa here. There's a possibility, just a possibility, because people will say, ridiculous, how could you possibly deliver to every single child on the planet in one night? You have to go quantum for that, guys. And remember, if you don't observe something, it's both a wave and a particle. It's here, there, it's everywhere. It's in this dimension, it's in the next. With all those children sleeping at night, tucked up in their beds, and parents insisting they go to sleep early. Who's to say the lack of observation isn't to blame for the fact he can make it round the world, Ben? Quantum Santa. And you know what? I've kind of stolen that from somebody. Get this. Dr. Stephen Hawkins.
Oh, good old... he's quite an amazing chap, isn't he?
Yeah, we'll just quote him. Nobody will laugh at me then.
Now, Hawkins is quite amazing, actually, because he knows everything there is to know, I'm sure, about physics. I mean, he's got one of the most brilliant minds in the world. But he's made comments about UFOs that are extraordinarily ignorant and show a lack of understanding on the subject. And
this is something that you are so very well versed in. And I know myself, my co-host Johnny Whistles, big shout out to him. You'll be so disappointed he missed tonight. But we really have been reinvigorated by the shows we've done with you, Ben. It's got us looking into the topic again. But what gets me, and it really, really irks me, so much disinfo out there, and it seems to be some of the bigger YouTube channels and even the mainstream media, they'll promote these channels that are injecting this into what is a very serious topic.
I know. I mean, it's a really strange, again, I mean, I've got to ask myself, if this is all nonsense and it's all in our heads, why is it getting all this attention? Why are the government putting so much resources into it, sending people like Nick Pope and Richard Doty out to get involved with us? And it's so, again, I think there must be some objective reality behind it.
And you're working on a UFO review. I believe this is part 3 coming out, Ben. Talk to us about that. Give us a few teasers from that, because...
Oh, my new video. Yeah. Well, it's actually about part 12, I think.
See, that shows what I know.
I've done quite a few of these. It's UFO Disclosure 2015. And of course, it's not happened. 2015 has not been the year of disclosure. Disclosure is, to quote Steve Bassett, the frank and full admission by the authorities that there is an extraterrestrial presence engaging the human race. And they haven't told us, surprisingly enough. Now, I've been covering this for a long, long time, and I've interviewed Steve Bassett on my radio show a few times. I've made a series of films. I think I've made about 12 films now. I'm in the process of making another, which I'll upload to YouTube before the end of the year. To ask a question, as I've always asked all the way through, willing disclosure is it's not happened this year. Can it happen at all? In other words, do the political structures of the world as we know them today have the capacity to absorb a revelation of this magnitude? We all know that there is a UFO cover-up. I mean, I've got no doubt about that at all. The government know these things exist. They have
totally agree with you there, Ben.
They have proof that these exist. They are keeping it from us, and in a sense, this is a secret that's bigger than big. It's one of these secrets that really, it's a secret whose revelation would actually bring down the political structures as we know them in the world today.
Just one way for people to think about it. I mean, we would obviously question the interstellar travel capabilities of these beings, and that would bring about free energy, and that in itself is enough to keep this hidden from the public.
Well, that is the main reason I think that it would be kept hidden. There are other reasons as well. Maybe we can talk about those too. But it's not, if they come forward and say we got UFOs, we're not alone in the universe. That in itself is a subject we can talk about. But we've salvaged the crashed wreckage of these craft when they come down to the Earth's surface. We have worked out how their power plant and propulsion system works, and we have our own working models based on that. But we can't tell you, because if you knew about this, we'd have to stop the oil industry. We'd have to stop it. It doesn't matter. We'd say all the environmental damage that's done. That's a price we're willing to pay. All the people in poverty, that's a price we're willing to pay. But we couldn't control you if you had this free energy, so we keep it from you. And the problem is, Kev, even if that wasn't the case, that if they came forward, it's not just that they'd have to face. They'd have to work out what they're going to do now. They'd also have to work out why they didn't tell us to begin with. They'd have to say, yes, we've had free energy, because it's not just UFOs we're talking about here. We're talking about Tesla and things like that go back more than 50 years before Roswell. Yes, we've known for over a century that we can produce energy from nothing, but we kept it from you. We didn't want to tell you. We did it for your benefit. We had your best wishes in heart. Well, actually, no, we didn't. We had our own interests at heart, and we kept it from you at great detriment to you. All the people who've died of poverty, all the wars for oil, all the environmental destruction that's been as a result of use of fossil fuels and lack of free energy. But we will make it up to you by bringing back school milk. I don't think, Kev, it'll work.
Exactly.
They wouldn't wash. They wouldn't be able to dig themselves out that hole.
Definitely. And it's like a kind of multi-layered thing, because we're not just talking about other beings in this universe, of which I believe they number many. We're talking about across the dimensions here, Ben.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, it's maybe not all UFOs come from other planets. Although, I mean, there's, for the first time in many, many years, we actually have some evidence of perhaps life on other planets, and some astronomers have just discovered it. But UFOs may well be something different, or at least some of them might be something. The UFO phenomenon may be a number of different phenomena that we've sort of put under a generic umbrella because of our own ignorance of it. But we could be dealing with several different phenomena here. Shall I talk about the star, that mysterious star?
Oh, I've just pulled up that page. I'll drop it in the
great
chat
minds,
room.
Kev. Great
go
minds.
for it, brother. I'll drop this in the chat.
Oh, well, is this to do with SETI? Somebody actually wrote to me. And they said, SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, is it designed to cover up UFOs? Is it part of this counterintelligence operation to cover up UFOs? Now, SETI is it's actually a group of different projects in the past and present, which has been designed to try and find extraterrestrial intelligence out in the universe by listening to their radio transmissions. There's all telescopes that are involved in this. Have you ever seen the film Contact with Jodie Foster?
Yeah, that's brilliant.
I love that film. And that's great. Now so far they've said there's been nothing. They haven't found anything. There's been a couple of occasions. In 1967, a radio astronomer called Susan Jocelyn Bell picked up a regular pattern of pulses from far out in the universe, and she called it LGM, Little Green Men. But it turned out to be a natural object. It was a new kind of star called a pulsar. Now, in 1977, 10 years later, a guy called Jerry Eman, he captured a signal which he really thought was artificial, and he was so amazed by it, he wrote the word "wow!" exclamation mark on the data sheet. Now, unlike the LGMs, WOW is still unsolved. But I'll tell you what, it's happened again. The Kepler Space Telescope, which is an amazing device which has been put up in space to search for planets orbiting other stars, these exoplanets. They're not going around the sun, they're going around other stars, light years away. It has found a very unusual star. This star it was looking for planets that will. The way it discovers planets is when these planets sort of cross in front of the star, they eclipse it slightly, and they alter the star's rotation and things like that. But what Kepler discovered around this particular star, it's quite a long way away. This star, it's 1,400 light years away, so that's a long way off. Was lots of multiple large objects. Now that is a very, very strange thing because that shouldn't be there.
That suggests like what's flying around in orbit here, satellites, stuff like that, and that suggests, dare I say it, life.
Yeah, much bigger ones. I mean, the scientist Dr. Tabitha Boyajian, who's running this project, she was wondering if this is something that the SETI people theorized, that a very, very high technology civilization would be able to put objects into space which were so big they'd be able to be seen. They'd be as big as planets, and they'd be able to be seen by things like Kepler. And they could be like giant solar panels designed to suck energy out of the sun.
Well, this is nice timing, you know. I haven't been to see it yet, so definitely no spoilers in the chat room or anything. But with Star Wars coming up, I mean, it sounds like you're talking about Death Stars and things like that, Ben.
Well, it's the artist's impressions of these structures look a bit like the Death Star, I must say. But what's happening now is they're starting to, they want to get the funding, and they want to get the permission to look more closely at this star. They want to take a big radio telescope and point it at this star and see if there's any alien radio transmissions coming off it. And they're actually going to start doing this in January. So just in a few weeks' time.
Now, is this part of this new project with Stephen Hawking again and the Russian billionaire Yuri Milner? Because I know they're intending to scan the skies for the next 10 years.
Oh, right. I don't know about that, but
Ben, at 10 years they're hiring the time on the very best of all the telescopes around the world in the best, most comprehensive search yet. But they're also going to use things like AI and cutting-edge technology from Silicon Valley to assist them.
Well, if they've got any sense, they'll start with this star. I mean, the problem with stars is like there's so many of them. That's the problem. It's like, where do you stop? It's like, where do you start with stars? I mean, it's just like,
we've just found an exoplanet 14 light years away. It's just barely out there.
Oh, 14 in cosmic terms, 14 light years is, it's the amount of time, the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second. It travels in 14 years. That's a long way. But in cosmic terms, Kev,
blink of an eye.
That's next door, yeah.
We'll get this because they found 2 red dwarfs out in the Oort cloud. And wait for it, Ben, because they're saying these could be contenders for the much talked about Nibiru.
Oh, Nibiru, yes.
Never seems to go away, but you know, as a conspiracy theorist, it's one word that we'll love.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if it'll ever come back, I don't know. But hopefully the aliens will come and save us. You never know. But I mean, I would love to see it, Kev. I'd love them to point this radio telescope at this star and see what's there. And I think Hawking and this Milner guy should do that. Well, the problem is, though, if they do find something, will we hear about it?
Well, it says here, and this comes from Time magazine, we are alive, we are intelligent, we must know. Stephen Hawking has made his concerns about the search for extraterrestrial life clear. But after his appearance with Russian billionaire Yuri Milner on Monday to announce the Breakthrough Listen project, the new £100 million initiative looking for signs of life, the astrophysicist seems to have at least partially reconsidered, tying in with what you were saying earlier on, Ben.
What did he say?
Well, he's basically reconsidered that there is intelligent life out there.
Maybe he wants to jump on the bandwagon because he was always good friends with Carl Sagan. Carl Sagan is it's interesting about this because Carl Sagan was very opposed to UFOs, but he was very keen on SETI. He was he made this thing called Cosmos, which was like a mini series of documentaries. They're pretty good, actually. They're worth watching. But he was very keen on SETI, but he was against UFOs, which I suppose is I suppose it would put them out of business if they're out there scanning the skies for something and there's this flying saucer flying around that space telescope.
They would be able to come along and prove or disprove any theories that are out there. And for anyone theorising that have sacked Johnny Whistles tonight, oh no, he has just appeared on the Death Star. Johnny Vader, welcome to the show.
Hi, Kev. Hi, Ben. Sorry
Hello, Johnny.
for being late.
Absolutely terrible behaviour, Johnny. I will chastise you after the show. But
he's gone over to the dark side.
Ben has been amazing tonight, as per usual.
I could imagine this. I hated missing this.
I was telling him how much he's inspired us into this UFO hunt again. And you know, Ben, before we go tonight, I mean, do you believe we're being visited right now at that governmental level by these beings? You do?
Yes.
Ditto.
I believe. That doesn't mean that SETI is used. That doesn't mean I'm not interested in what SETI will discover out in the universe. But the fact of the matter is, they're not out there. They're down here with us already. Whatever they are, wherever they've come from, they're here. Something is here.
And we wouldn't be speaking to each other via fibre optic broadband if it wasn't for crashes at Roswell and other places, because that's where we back engineered the tech from.
Well, if you believe Colonel Corso, yeah, I'm not sure about that personally, but that's one idea. I mean, that's one possibility.
So, come on, give us your Roswell take before we go. Come on, I need to hear it.
All right. Well, I must say, I didn't get much out of the book by Colonel Corso. I didn't.
So do you think Roswell's kind of like the harp that's put out there for public consumption?
Oh, well, the Roswell incident, I think, was actually what it appears to be. It was the crash of some kind of extraterrestrial artifact onto the Earth's surface. This was then secretly salvaged by the government, and they covered up that fact. It's a stance they maintain to this day. No, I'm not questioning the Roswell incident at all. I think it was what people say it is. The fact is that the government have changed their story on Roswell so many times. First it was a weather balloon, then it was crash test dummies, then it was Project Mogul, then then it was Russian bodies and dead bodies and things like that. I mean, they can't even get their story straight. They are covering it up. There's the witnesses. There's a new film coming out by a guy called I can't remember his name. Oh dear, but he's making a book called Cosmic Whistleblowers, and he's made a film called Cosmic Whistleblowers, and it's definitively these witnesses are still there and they're still speaking out.
And Ben, before we go, where can people find your work one last time, sir?
Hospital Porters Against the New World Order. It's a big website with that's also a portal. I tend to update Hapanwo Voice. That's my news site. I update that more often.
When's your radio show?
Every Thursday night. Well, it's Wednesday this week because Thursday's Christmas Eve, of course. At 8 p.m. on Hapanwo Radio. The links are all on the main, on the website. So.
And remember, folks, stay tuned for Joe Joseph Christmas week here on KBS. Guess what? There will not be Rebros wherever you are. Make it TFR.
And Denny touched that guy.